Welcome to Speechies Talk About. I'm your host, Zoe Gilbertson, and Series 3 is a special edition meeting some of the authors and contributors to a wonderful new resource for supervision, a book entitled Supervision in Speech and Language Therapy, Personal Stories and Professional Wisdom. I look forward to introducing you to some of the contributors. There we are. Okay, and welcome to Speechies Talk About, and welcome Cathy and Sam. Thank you.
Hello.
Thanks
for
Thank you
having
for
us.
coming back.
We couldn't stay away.
So, yeah, you were here in the first series, so we've done a few of the get to know you questions, but a very good reason to come back is congratulations on the publication of your book. It's not just the two of you, you edited together with Deborah Harding, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the three of us. We'll tell you a bit
So
about that before we go.
Yeah, whose idea was it? Who came up with the plan?
Well, I guess, I think we've probably thought about or had thought about creating a book for quite a long time, but then families and work commitments and whatever sort of got in the way. And then it's always good to have a sort of external kind of request. So I got an email from Routledge asking if I would like to write a book. And I wasn't really sure whether I did want to or not, because at the time I was thinking I didn't necessarily want to get so involved maybe. But then I thought, oh, it's a golden opportunity. Spoke to Sam, said, how do you fancy it? And we were definitely both keen to put something in writing, as it were, having been involved with supervision for such a long time. And then we asked Deborah Harding, because she was sort of could offer a more kind of from an academic perspective, having done a PhD looking at supervision, and we from more of a kind of clinical teaching perspective. And she seemed up for it as well. So then we just went back to Routledge and said, yeah, we would do it. I'll do it, but only if I can do it with these people, as it were.
Yeah.
And then the sort of process, I guess, began about what it was that we actually wanted to create. We had quite a lot. There was quite a lot of discussion
Early
about
discussions, absolutely.
Yeah, about the sort of book that we wanted to put out there, and it definitely wasn't a how to do supervision book. That was not. We're all very clear about that, and I guess kind of organically through our conversations, we found that this was, telling or allowing people to tell their stories around supervision. That kind of multiple voices sort of sat pretty well. Is that about the process? The process?
Yeah, absolutely.
So was it the people, or was it the topics? Where did the chapter decision start?
I think, probably a bit of a mix. We wanted to appeal to a wide readership, so we knew we needed to speak to the many different ways that supervision is being practiced and being experienced, and being understood within the profession and beyond. So I think that was one of the reasons why we didn't just want it to be our voices. We wanted to really catch the voices of people within the profession that were actively engaging in their own supervision and in offering supervision. And I think, I suppose we started probably by drawing up a list of people that we knew that were quite active, and were active within supervision, were interested in supervision, interested in supporting robust supervision practice. And then also started to think about alongside the different perspectives. I suppose supervision, we wanted it to sort of, I don't know, the book to showcase the prism of supervision, the many different perspectives and the many different practices. So we wanted that, I suppose, to be reflecting student experiences, to be reflecting experienced practitioner experiences, manager experiences, experiences working with students, service user perspectives, theory, practice.
I think it was also trying to find the people who would be prepared to write the chapters, because committing yourself to writing a chapter, it was like we approached a lot of people, and quite a lot of them actually were excited about the thought of writing. I think it was only later that they realised that the reality of writing was going to be quite difficult. I'm not saying everybody found it super difficult, but I think it's more time consuming, and I think you're more under scrutiny when you're writing something that's going to be in print than you are when you're having a conversation. So I think the two things sort of happened. Like, we were thinking of the people, we thought, oh yeah, so and so, they'd be interested, or they'd be a good person, and then we were thinking, oh, how could the themes that we were wanting sort of match the people, and yeah, between the three of us, I would say that was why the three editors was a good idea.
It was a good number, I think, because we just knew different people within the field, and so could reach out and again have the broad perspectives that I think the book really has.
Definitely.
Oh, it's definitely achieved that. Yeah, lovely, a lovely mix. And I guess, like you say, I like the stories and wisdom. It's really interesting because some of them are about, say, almost a specific situation, and others feel more like an experience over time.
I think that was one of the things that I think people, not to harp on about the people finding it difficult to write, but I think normally if you write a chapter in a book, or you're asked to, it's quite often from perhaps a more academic perspective or theoretical, whereas we were actually asking people to use I or we in a group about their experiences. And that, I think, well, hopefully that really sings in the book, and helps the reader engage more with the stories, because people are actually talking from very personal and quite private sometimes perspectives, and are prepared to be quite open to everybody. So that also was kind of harder for some, but I think people really got a lot out of it. It was almost like their own reflective practice opportunity.
Well, I think I think we really wanted to demystify what good supervision practice looks like, and it tends to happen behind a closed door, doesn't it? Supervision, it is very private, so bringing that into the public domain and inviting people to reflect really openly and candidly about their experiences, be that one-to-one, be that peer, be that group supervision, be that I don't know, some of the practitioners that were really wanting to roll supervision out within their wider service. It is. I don't know. I suppose I'm a real believer that personal stories often are what we connect with, and we were hoping that that's what would really inspire people to see what's possible, and to consider their own supervision arrangements, and for it to inspire them to see that it could, that there are other choices, I suppose, other possibilities that they might want to explore.
It really felt like the theory was there and the evidence, but it was brought to life by the personal stories.
Right.
Like you say, the possibility, I think, really reflects what I got from it.
And I think also, because we are obviously, as maybe, well, you, but maybe quite a few people know, we've been embedded and surrounded by this topic for 20 years plus, well, longer, for maybe teaching about it anyway, for 20 years. And I think we thought we knew kind of mainly what supervision was, but through the conversations with the writers of the chapters and the conversations with Debbie and obviously the two of us, we were learning new things about it. So it wasn't just for the reader to learn new things, we were learning new things as well, which was great. I think that was a really, and things sometimes were I was challenged. I'll say I was challenged by some of the ideas that some of the authors were bringing to the table. I was like, is that what supervision is? That's not necessarily how I see it. So I think it it was a really good opportunity to sort of challenge all of us in the space. So yeah, it was great.
So did that make it really difficult to choose chapters?
Um, well, we'd already, I mean, I guess when we set out at the beginning, we, like Sam was saying, with choosing who we thought would be good people to write, and alongside that, the topics, then I think we'd sort of committed, if you like, to those people. So whatever they were going to write, I mean, we wrote because we thought, like you were saying, that they were invested in supervision, that they were interested, that they used supervision, that they knew something about it, maybe done some training. So we knew there was a certain level, but how people use it in practice just varies so much. So we made a commitment to those people that we were going to receive their chapters. But obviously, because we were editors, apart from writing our own chapter, the three of us were editors. So we read and reread and reread all of the chapters, but many times. So we could see what was sort of emerging as people's views. So that was, some was quite an eye-opener, I would say, to how people were using supervision. In a good way, but sometimes in a different way to how I might consider it. So we didn't veto any chapters because we didn't agree with them. But there were some difficult conversations, I would say.
I think it helped us refine our language and our
Definitely.
conceptualization of supervision, which was, I mean, that was really interesting. But it was a fascinating process as editors to see the themes emerging as the chapters were coming in, to look at the differences, look at the similarities, and to look at how our understanding of supervision was being refined. And I think that's reflected hopefully in the introduction, which was the chapter we wrote last, which was really trying to pull everything together.
Yeah, because supervision is one word, but you can add, before it, professional supervision, clinical supervision, managerial supervision, and we had to be clear with the authors that they used sort of terminology that was to a greater or lesser extent consistent, so that everybody was understanding the same thing. And some people call the same thing by different names, shall we say? So we, it was the rigor of that we had to kind of enforce, because for the reader to understand, because there needed to be some things that worked across the chapters. They were individuals or groups writing the chapters, but as the reader, you want to be able to understand across the chapters as well. So
for it to be cohesive, which is very difficult. I mean, that's part of the writing process. That's really difficult.
really
I've found that we're all quite inconsistent actually once you get going. We use lots of different terms for similar things, don't we? So who do you think will be the target audience for this book? Who do you think will find it useful?
Well, I guess, the three of us well, Sam continues to be speech and language therapists, and so I guess that is the target, from students right through to managers and beyond. In fact, just a little story on that, which might be of interest to people, is that I was approached by somebody who was not yet even a student. She was trying to apply for becoming, to go on one of the speech therapy courses. And it was around the time that we were writing the book, and it was just being produced. And so I sort of said, "Oh, do you fancy getting a copy of our book?" And it occurred to me that actually what we're trying to do is, and she's now training. She's in her first year, finishing the first year at UCL. But I kind of feel like the readership, within the speech and language therapy community, come on to the others as well, but is really trying to help people to see that supervision is absolutely, non-negotiable from the beginning. So for her, going on to her course, she had that book and she could see, and that this is not something that's an option. It's something that's you absolutely 100% need it, from being a student to being a newly qualified right through, and you still need it,
Hmm.
when you're a manager. It might look different, but you still need it. So I guess that was just quite a useful sort of reminder for me of the need to, ensure that as students, they're talking about supervision not as this something that's a bit separate, which was definitely the
Hmm.
case in my day, but something that is part of, the just the sort of lifeblood, I suppose, of the profession that people are going into.
Hmm.
So yeah, but also we wanted it to be for other professions to access it, which I know they are. So AHPs and and people in independent practice and in the NHS and through to managers and all the way
Hmm.
up to really sort of policymakers. I mean,
And educators. Yeah.
yeah, people who have an influence, over good practice and a good solid culture of
Hmm.
supervision and self-care within their profession.
Hmm.
I think we try to appeal. I mean, it's very difficult with one book to try to appeal to everybody. And obviously, most of the people who wrote the chapters were, in fact, speech and language therapists. We did have
Mm.
some others, but most of them were. But I mean, I don't know what feedback you've received, but I know other professional groups who've read and have found it, psychologists, counsellors, people who found
Mm.
it helpful. That be your experience?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because although it speaks, to the personal stories, there is a universality to some of the issues that people are grappling with
Mm.
that speaks across
Definitely.
professions. And I think, there
Yeah.
wasn't a book, when we first started writing it, there wasn't a book about supervision in speech and language therapy. So there was something about wanting to put it
That's
on the
good.
map, actually,
Yeah.
and really encourage practitioners individually to think about their own supervision, but absolutely, as you say,
Mm.
at all levels, not just. I think there is a trend to be thinking about early career supervision, so for
Mm.
trainees and newly qualified therapists. And what I hope the book encourages practitioners to think about is the importance of supervision later in their career,
Mm.
as senior practitioners, as managers, as educators, educating.
Mm.
I think, I think, as you say, I see it as the heartbeat of my practice, and we really wanted to speak to that
Mm.
universality.
Yeah, and we definitely, just thinking about our training that we've offered, we definitely have had over the years some trusts who've said, oh, well, obviously the band eights, they don't need supervision because why would they? Because of course they know everything. And we're like, no, that it
Yeah.
just needs to be delivered in a different way. Maybe you need to look
Hmm.
outside your own trust for the right person, but you continue. That would almost sort of suggest that you don't need to learn anymore. And it's such a bespoke, individual way of
Mm,
learning. It's
Hmm.
CPD, but at its absolute sort of, unique, bespoke way. I sort of
Mm.
think, why would you think that that would be the case? So yeah, it's an interesting one that and you're sort of expected also to know what supervision is as you even
Hmm.
if
mm.
as soon as you're saying, oh, you need to be a supervisor, say, oh, well, I don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
I mean that maybe has happened to you as well, Zoe, the
Yeah, I think it's the stories
expectation.
you hear time and time again, isn't it? That people
Yeah,
sometimes move into a job role that expects supervision without having had training in it, either through their
mm,
course or afterwards. And, I was very lucky that I was supported to come on your trainings very early when I started,
yeah,
supervising
great.
others. Um, but lots of people don't. I think it does. It makes a huge difference when there's a commitment to quality supervision and also
Mm,
supervision of supervision. I don't think it's talked about
Absolutely.
enough. And,
Mm,
it's great that you are both sort of bringing that to the
mm,
foreground as something really important to the future of our profession. And like you say, other HP psychologists, so many roles would benefit from this very specialized type of CPD that it just, it's so different from the theory-based sort of learnings of a
yeah,
webinar or a course that's to do with something
mm,
perhaps more impairment focused to do
yeah,
with the clinical delivery when we're expected to be so client-centered. You know,
Yeah.
the things that come up, you know, different every time.
100%, 100%.
Mm. I mean, I was just thinking in terms of target audience as well. I mean, in many ways, we're also wanting to catch people who don't really know much about supervision
Yeah.
to try and sort of
Yeah.
let them be more informed, or who maybe are a bit skeptical about
Okay,
supervision,
yes.
True. That is true.
or have, had some unhelpful experiences of
Yes.
supervision,
Yes.
so
Mm,
that they can perhaps just restory that or see that there are other possibilities too.
Yeah, and often people are more skeptical because they haven't really had
Mm.
the experience of what it can really offer. So it
yeah.
may have been more that they've had the experience of it just being a sort of checklist or a quick catch up, and they don't
Hmm.
really know. They're sort of, oh God, I've got to go to supervision. Whereas people who really understand what it is
Mm.
will dedicate the time and will,
Hmm.
keep it in their diary at all costs.
Yeah.
So you're right. I think it's people that think they know a lot but don't know much, and people who possibly know more than they do. And
Mm.
but it's kind of trying to catch a bit of a catch-all, I suppose, trying to catch everybody through the
Mm.
Yeah.
process. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think because of the range of stories, like you say, from different perspectives, really helps bring all those ideas together, doesn't it? If you're not sure what you're looking for, well, there's a great place to start. Have a think
Mm.
about the range that's out there.
Yeah, and also I think, for example, in the first chapter, which we referenced, which is Zane Pereira, I think that was just a really lovely story of somebody who really hadn't had
Mm.
what I call proper supervision. She
Mm,
would, I think, agree with that throughout her career until the point that she kind of engaged with us, and we said, well, what you've been having isn't really supervision. This is what it
mm,
is. And I think that's really so pertinent because it's so many people's
Mm.
stories that
Yeah.
we've heard
yeah.
over the
Mm.
years of what is this thing, supervision? Oh, it's people telling me what I should do, or it's a kind
Hmm.
of surveillance, or
Mm.
it's
Mm.
checking that I've done something right. And it's
Mm.
like, no,
Yeah.
that's not what it is. And trying to help people to understand that there's just way more that it is, and it can be. So I think that first chapter, if people are interested in buying or reading the book, I think the first chapter is really a good sort of
Mm.
solid start to saying, you
Mm,
know what, you may not be alone in this world of what on earth is supervision, and have I missed the boat? And I would
mm,
always say, if you come to it late, don't worry, just
Mm.
come and
It's
find
never
it.
too late.
Yeah, it's never
Yeah.
too late. Now is just the beginning, definitely.
what a
Mm.
lovely, yeah, I love that. Okay, so you wrote the final chapter as well, which is looking back and looking forward, facilitating robust supervision culture and practice through training. So tell us a bit about that.
I go first. So
Yeah.
yeah, well, we take a historical perspective, don't we, really? Looking at how we have developed a series of training courses over the course of the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I suppose I think we were, well, wanting to track the evolution of the training courses and the sort of genesis of those
Yeah.
courses,
Yeah.
but also wanting to, um, I suppose, explain something of the process
Mm,
of developing them. I think we were both, whilst we came at the supervision training courses with experience of training, and experience of being supervisees and supervisors.
Yeah.
We hadn't run supervision training courses. So part of what the chapter does is capture that development process really,
Mm.
and how it was very experimental. We there was a lot of research in what people were interested in hearing about and learning about in terms of supervision, and then running courses and
Yeah.
gathering feedback and developing them. So we tried to capture something of the kind of iterative process, I suppose, of developing training over
Mm.
over time.
I guess that it probably looked to the outsider like, oh, well, they've obviously got a course and that's great, and they're doing it, and then they've got another course, and then they've got another course. But behind the scenes, it's a bit like we were saying before, what goes on behind the scenes. So behind the scenes was us literally sort of dipping our toe in the water, wasn't it? Of saying, I wonder whether people are interested in this. And the more people seemed to be interested, the more we thought, okay, so they are interested, so let's move on and create a second course and a third course. And, I think it was trying to tell that story, I suppose, wasn't it?
Absolutely, because I think we felt, I mean, I suppose what led us to develop the training courses and then write about it is just the belief really that people have insufficient training on supervision. I mean, I think you referred to it earlier, really. People tend to invest in terms of their CPD, they tend to invest in clinical development rather than the development of themselves as supervisees and supervisors. So we really wanted to put supervision training on the map and encourage people to invest in themselves and their engagement with supervision through training. And map out the process really of the range of courses that we've gone on to develop.
Definitely, definitely. And also, help people see that supervision, we're teaching them about supervision, but actually good supervision practice makes you a better clinician. So actually it sort of is a clinical course, but it's not, it's sort of by stealth, as it were. It's showing people that actually if you invest your time in a supervision course, you will then be investing your time in not only yourself, but perhaps your colleagues, your clients, their families, multi-professional colleagues as well as speech therapy colleagues. So I think it has it's a big reach for the courses went a long way in helping people, and I think helping people to understand that they were important. That always this thing about who should we see as the most important? Is it the patient or client, or is it the practitioner? And I would say always it's the practitioner, because if the practitioner's performing at their best and supervision can help them to do that, then they're offering the patient the best service. So it is for them, but it ultimately it's also for the people that we're working with, for sure. But I guess like you were saying about getting feedback from people and then developing the courses subsequent. I mean, there was always a lot of discussion, wasn't there, about the feedback forms. So we were always like, please fill in the feedback forms, because when you go on a course, people ask you to fill in the feedback forms, and that might be generally because you want to tweak it. But for us at the beginning, we absolutely needed to know whether this was something that people wanted, whether it was delivered in the way they wanted it. So after each course, we would write on it with all the feedback that people are given, and then we would amend or elaborate the next course, supervision 1 or supervision 2, whatever, according to that. So
and we were receptive. We totally, I think actually what we discovered is the more people came along for training, the more people wanted further training and skills practice opportunities, and to look at different, it comes back to that prism, look at different aspects of supervision practice in a really practical way. So it has been lovely seeing the evolution of the groups and the evolution of the community, I suppose, of people, not just speech and language therapists, allied health and care professionals as well, who are engaging and committed to robust supervision culture and practice. But the book, the chapter rather, it takes a historical perspective and sort of captures that evolution. It looks at how at the audience, how the audience changed over time.
Changed, isn't it? Yeah.
From being much more uniprofessional to multi-professional, from being much more NHS to a lot of independent practitioners.
Yeah, that was a big shift, wasn't it? Because there were more independent practitioners out there, so and they of course also need supervision. So I think that was quite noticeable, wasn't it?
Absolutely. The shift, obviously COVID meant we moved online, and that made the course much more accessible to people across the country. and the shift from sort of scheduled courses that we would put on to being commissioned
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
NHS Trust. So we're looking at sort of tracking the evolution, I suppose, of the audience, but also looking forward to
Yeah.
whilst it's part retrospective reflection, it's also looking to the future and our hopes for the future in relation
Yeah.
to supervision within the profession.
Mm.
So maybe, moving towards more nationally recognized training programs like there are
Mm.
in counselling, and accreditation possibilities, drawing
Mm.
on, I suppose, the parallel with dysphagia, don't we? Because we have sort of
Mm.
Yeah.
basic, intermediary, and advanced dysphagia training,
Yeah.
a competencies framework.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and maybe a sort of more of a national register of supervisors that are really qualified and investing in an ongoing way in their
Mhm.
supervision of supervision and CPD around supervision.
Yeah.
Mm. And I think also they're trying to kind of impress upon people that the supervision training, right from the very first one that we did, is not just for people who are being supervisors, that
Mm.
actually everybody needs to go on some
Yeah.
training, because to know what to expect from a supervisor, it's good to have
Mhm.
been on some training so that you are a supervisee who understands the process.
Mm.
So people
Mhm.
saying, no, no, I'm not a supervisor yet. We're like, it doesn't matter.
Mm.
Start coming on that first course,
Mhm.
which was a very broad sort of opportunity for people to just learn about what supervision is. And also we were trying to, through our training, I guess, we also did some training at universities, trying to get them to invest in, supervision as a specific entity,
Mhm.
as on the syllabus. And I think that then people who come on the courses have had something. I would say there's not enough. Just say that now, that I think there's still not
Mm.
enough training on the postgrad or undergrad speech therapy training courses around supervision. So when
Mhm.
people land in their first job, they don't really know what this thing is called supervision,
Mm.
other than maybe what they've had as a student in terms of being assessed.
Mm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's quite an important sort of angle on
Distinction.
that, for sure.
Yeah. And you say, this course has sort of developed and evolved over time. Was there ever a big surprise or a big shift that you weren't really expecting?
In terms of what people were wanting,
What?
you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, well, I don't know about you, but I think there was, as people got more confident about knowing what to ask for of their own, when they came on the first course and they knew what to ask for when they went back to their job area. I think then I would say that the thing for me that was sort of most delightful and shocking was that people just wanted more.
Yeah.
So I
Hmm.
think when that first course gave people confidence to say, yeah, I'm not having it, or I'm not having enough, or it's not good enough,
Hmm.
or I want something that allows more flexibility. So they go away with that confidence. And then before we knew it, they'd be booking on the second one, and then
Yeah.
we'd need to develop the third one. And then we created some ones for people who'd been on those three, some other ones, sort of advanced ones that people could come on. So I think that for me, it was that was really kind of I don't know, gratifying, I suppose, that people felt they
Mm.
could return to their workplace, which wasn't necessarily what
Mm.
I mean, we didn't really set out to think people were going to be able to advocate more for themselves, but actually they did, didn't
They
they?
did, I
Um,
think.
so that was really that was really encouraging to see that, I would say.
And I think
Would you agree with that?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think another encouraging trend is that people would come, say, on a scheduled course that we were running as a singleton,
Oh yeah.
and then go back to their trust or their
Yeah.
workplace, um, and advocate for everyone to have
Hmm.
access to the
Yeah.
training. In order, I think that recognition that there really needed to be a critical mass of people engaging in training in order
Yeah.
to really shift the culture. and the ethos, and really develop robust supervision practice. So I think that was really lovely that people would start advocating, and then they would become more senior within organizations and obviously be able to influence the culture that way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's an unexpected sort of what do you call it, sort of benefit has been the relationships that people have built across the different courses. So you might come on one, and then maybe 6 months later you might go on the second one, and you might go on with some of the people that were on the first, and how people have like, oh yeah, well, let's swap numbers and let's make sure. And I know that there's been many cases where, again, this was not something that we had predicted, that people have said, will you supervise me? They found somebody where there's a really nice fit, and they thought, yeah, this would be, so they've kind of made those connections outside of the courses as well. So I think that's been that's just been such a great I don't know, it's a feel good for us that people are I don't know, just sort of connecting across the courses and in between the courses in different ways, and continue to do that. Lots of people know each other through that, don't they?
Completely. I think initially it was all about knowledge mobilization, just trying to really get the training, but we've really looked at community building in a way that's been surprising and energizing.
So nice,
yeah. And what about those that don't attend any formalized training? Do you think you can be a great supervisor without having gone on training?
Oh, I think when you were sending these questions, Zoe, and I was like, good question. That's a good question. Yeah, well, we probably have a similar view, and we probably come to it from a similar perspective. So shall I just say my bit first, and then you? Yeah. So when I went, I mean, many people know this anyway, but when I first was qualified, there really wasn't any supervision, and then I was asking for it, and that sort of wasn't available. So the people didn't really know what it was. So it wasn't even that somebody was going to supervise me who didn't know, because they weren't even going to supervise me. So I accessed somebody outside who actually did have some training and who did know what it was and who did offer me that opportunity. But I would say I started as a supervisee not having any training, and I quickly went to being a supervisor because I felt it was important, without any formal training, because there wasn't the in tandem training, and there was just the nursing training, which is quite different from the sort of training that we're offering. So I would say I kind of cut my teeth by just trying things out, but that's a bit more haphazard than perhaps people would like and I would like. So I felt like I then benefited from somebody who had training, who was a very good supervisor. So I say that's one way of learning. But I would also say alongside that, having some formal training, whether it's the in tandem training, whether there's coaching training or other sorts of supervision training, is essential. So I think we're both agreed that if you're looking for a supervisor, or you're asking for supervision, to find someone who has had some training, or some that they've got some sense of some frameworks that they might use, so they're not sort of feeling in the dark with it. I think that the two are important. So I think going on a course will give you some tools, and that's really important, and some frameworks. But I also think being supervised by someone who has had training but is a good supervisor and understands what it is, I would say the two hand in hand. But I, as a supervisee, also need to know what good supervision is. So and I might learn that through having good supervision, but also by going on the training. So I guess I'm saying good training is important, it's essential. But I also want to be supervised by somebody who has had that training. But I think
I'd completely agree
you had a
with that,
similar
really.
start as well.
I had, I mean, a similar, it is, isn't it, that you get to a certain grade or level of experience, and the expectation is that you then start supervising. I think I was fortunate that I was sent on a supervision training course very soon, if not kind of at the beginning, which was a psychology training course. So that was really helpful. And I had, I was very grateful that this is where I suppose our experience is different, is I had some really solid experience of supervision going into being a supervisor.
Yeah.
So I knew what good supervision looked like. I had that template, those role models alongside the training. And I think that made a huge difference. But I think I then went on later and did a diploma training course, which was a more extensive training. And I think it was at that point that I probably, and through our offering training courses, that I became much more, I don't know, sort of familiar with different theoretical frameworks, which I do think ground my practice, as well as, looking at and engaging with theory into practice. So yeah, like you, I think I certainly wouldn't want to work with a supervisor who wasn't trained. And I do think, yeah, our practice and good practice needs to be complemented with training, and not just initial training. I think like any aspect of our career, if, we need to invest in ongoing continuing development in that. So it is about ongoing training, ongoing supervision of supervision, and really looking at building that infrastructure around your practice. So like supervision training is one part, I suppose, of that network of support around practice.
Agreed.
So, what advice would you give someone looking for something different from their supervision?
Oh, how long have you got? That's such a small
In a
question
summary,
and such a big answer. Well, I mean, I suppose in order to get something different, is that you're asking how would you go about it, or what would you?
Yeah, what are the starting points? I mean, I would say a really good starting point is to have a look at the book, actually. I think there are lots of different perspectives in there that people will find useful. But yeah, if they're feeling a bit stuck and they're not getting from supervision what they think they could, what would be their steps, do you think?
I mean, I think that one of the key ways in which you can kind of look at options and alternatives is to have a really good relationship with your supervisor. I think building, to begin with, you have to have that relationship in order to have that conversation, and I think that is a two-way thing. So the supervisor and the supervisee need to be prepared to review how things are going, to have that conversation that is about, oh, am I giving you what you want as far as me as a supervisor? Is the supervisee getting what they need? What are the other options? What are the alternatives? Either at a sort of micro level, which may be that they were looking for more challenge or more support, or they're looking for more creativity or whatever, or maybe they're looking for a bigger level. They might be looking for someone who's perhaps got more experience in a certain area, or they might be looking for more frequent, or they might be looking for kind of something a bit different. So I think I would say that, I mean, supervision for me is about the relationship that you have with your supervisee or your supervisor, the two people together, or if it's a group or a peer, building a relationship where you feel comfortable and confident to say, this isn't going the way that I want it to. Can we look at it? But to be a bit sort of preempt that is to say, why don't we take the view that we're going to review this relationship every, I don't know, 6 sessions or something like that. And that's just a random, so if you're seeing somebody once a month, it might be that you say, okay, over a 6-month period, you might say, okay, once it's got to 6 months, let's look at how we're working together. But I also would say that with all the supervisees that I've ever had, and with my own supervisor, I would almost be doing that as a more implicit ongoing thing anyway. Like at the end of the session, I'd be saying, how's it gone if I'm the supervisor, or I might be saying that as the supervisee as well. How's this gone? How am I, what am I taking away? How have I benefited from it? What might need to change? So it doesn't have to be that 6 month thing, but I think that's a good opportunity for a slightly bigger review. But I would also say that the conversation needs to be alive within that relationship as you continue. And if somebody said to me, I'm not quite getting what I need, I would be like, brilliant, you've identified that you need something different. Let's talk about what you might need, and I can perhaps help you find someone else. So I think that for me, it's like the relationship is the sort of starting point of that helpful conversation. And out of that can come the possibilities of difference. And I've changed loads of things about supervisory relationships I've had because of that review process, and consequently, some people I've seen for many, many years. Because if I look back, it was very different when we first started seeing each other, and then it changed, and then maybe they've gone away for a bit and they've come back, or maybe they want sort of me every other session and they go and see someone else who's a specialist or something in their field. So I think having that, I don't know, it's just something about building that connection and relationship at the beginning is the right platform. Anyway, that's my shortish answer.
But I completely agree. I mean, we MOT our car every year, don't we? I think there's something about regularly MOTing our supervisory relationships and seeing it in through that lens. And I think this is where theory can also support us. There are lots of developmental models of supervision that really demonstrate that what we want from supervision changes over the course of our career. What we want as trainees, as band 5s, band 6, band 7s, it's going to vary. So I think positioning that front and center in many ways encourages us to keep the conversations you're saying and the contract alive, and to be really regularly supporting someone to reflect on their changing needs in a dynamic way. So I think seeing that as a sort of given is really important. And I think, like you're saying, that there are the value of that refresh, or having multiple supervisory arrangements. You could have a primary supervisor and then other, maybe a peer group, or a facilitated group, or a peer supervision. You can complement and vary so that you meet all of your needs. I guess the key thing is about putting yourself on the map and identifying that you have needs, and then thinking how you can best meet them in a supervisory capacity.
I think knowing theory and knowing good practice helps you as the supervisor to know what the alternatives are. I think if you don't have much theory and you haven't had much practice, you might not know what those are. So I think you can then offer that sort of a sort of selection of things that you might be able to offer. But I'm also very clear about my limitations, as well. So and I think as you become more confident in your own sort of supervisory style, you're able to say, well, I offer this, but I'm not so much this. And I think that's helpful in that, going back to that relationship.
Totally. But I think we also have to challenge the sort of complacent, or the settling for what you're given. That actually,
that's true.
There is something about it is what I'm being given, what I need or want at this point in time. And I think empowering people to that this is their space, their learning opportunity, and it is really important that they are proactive at getting what they want and not being frightened. I think those conversations need to be they are courageous conversations. I suppose as supervisors we need to encourage them, that it's not a personal criticism or that there's anything at fault to be saying that a supervisory relationship has maybe come to its natural end or been outgrown.
And finally, because we've spoken, I've really enjoyed all the conversation about supervision and training, but also this big mountain that you've accomplished of publishing a book. for your fellow professionals. Any advice for people looking to write a book for their fellow professionals?
Well, I
Well,
suppose it's
you've
with
done it
you.
before, haven't you? This was my first book. I've contributed to books
Yeah.
before, but not written one. So I don't know. You've probably got more
I don't know. I mean, I
advice.
suppose there's something about writing a book or editing a book. I do think that is very
Yeah, that's very
different.
true. Yeah, because we didn't write it.
We didn't write it exclusively. We've edited it, and I think there's something. I don't know. I think there's something about being passionate about a topic and wanting to offer a platform, I suppose, for different voices and perspectives,
Hmm.
um, to be heard. That is quite exciting. I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah, I mean, we all wanted to write it. We wanted to, be involved in it. We definitely
Hmm.
wanted something to be able to hold it and show it and be
Mm,
proud of it, and all those things we are. It took probably about 3 years in
mm,
total, and the reason
Hmm.
for the length of time were varied, but it was, we started it just after COVID, and I think that was a difficult time for lots of people. Some people couldn't spare the time to write a lot, even though they wanted to, because we were asking them to write it or amend it and get it back to us in a certain time frame,
mm,
but you know they had to prioritize their work time to do work rather than to write our chapter. That was sort of low down on their list. So I
mm,
think, and I think, after COVID, I think just generally there have been a lot more things that seem to have kind of happened with people in terms of health and well-being issues.
yeah,
So I think that
yeah.
took we had to just ask the publishers just to bear with us, because people's lives are
Yeah.
complicated and
Mm,
messy, and
think that,
notwithstanding our own, and I think
mm.
it does take a long time to get the chapter in for us all to read it, then us all to discuss it, then we had to find the time. So it took a long
It's a
time.
labor of love.
It was a labor
Yeah.
of love. We're not going to be millionaires or anything.
No.
um I think it definitely is challenging at times. It took longer than I thought, but it didn't take
Hmm.
much longer than I thought. I thought it was
Mm,
going to take quite a long time. I thought it was going to be hard work. It was all those things. But I think it was also incredibly stimulating. Some of the
Hmm.
discussions that we had were, just you never knew where the discussion was going
mm,
to go. People gave their energy and their time to write the
Hmm.
chapters. We were extremely grateful, especially when we had to send the chapter back, with everybody, we had to send the chapter back with comments, etc. That's always quite sort of tricky to take feedback, but everybody took it on the chin
incredibly
and were
gracious.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, they were really
Hmm.
brilliant with it. So it's sort of, yeah, it was definitely a 3 year long CPD exercise of our own. Um,
Yes.
no, it was it.
Yeah.
I would say to people, you need to be really into. It's probably not that I've ever done one, but probably a bit like doing a PhD. You have to
Mm,
really, really love what
yeah.
you're
Hmm.
going to be involved in, and we really, really loved it. We
Mm,
really love
Yeah.
it. So, and very keen for it to be out there. So I guess that kind of, and I think the same for Deb. She really was passionate about it as well. So. Um,
yeah. That's is a. It has to be a driving force, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
we
Really.
kept
Mm,
driving the vehicle forward, didn't
mm.
we? Because we were really interested in it.
But there are some, I mean, for all the time and some of the demands, there are precious moments, when you have this collection of chapters where people have written and put their heart and time into
Yeah,
this
yeah,
chapter and nobody else has seen it yet. You're
Yeah.
you're curating and reading and putting together, agreeing the sequence of chapters. And so there is something sort of you're giving birth to this entity that
Mm.
you are
feel very
then
proud. Yeah,
absolutely.
and I think people felt very proud who had not ever written any chapters before,
Hmm.
or a chapter before. So I think people, you know, they felt delighted and that they'd created it and were very happy with the end product. So, and that even though it was probably hard work rewriting certain sections, or amending certain sections, I think they were really, really happy with the
Mm,
final
yeah.
outcome of it. So yeah, and I hope everybody's pleased with the way that it's sort of all come together. Like we were saying before, it's lots of individual stories, but somehow they kind of create a whole,
Mm.
with
Mm.
the sort of diversity of it.
Yeah.
But there is something about you curate. The book is there. That when we got sent a copy,
Yes.
and you're holding it for the first time, and then it's letting it out into the world, and
Yeah. Hoping that people.
not really knowing how it's going to land, just hoping that it is going to be supportive and helpful, and develop people's interest,
Yeah.
enthusiasm, and commitment to supervision.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure many other people will find it interesting and not just theoretically interesting, but I think it will make a difference to how people perceive and use
Yeah.
supervision. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, absolutely. And
We've done
we've
our job.
fulfilled our job, yeah, what we hoped for.
Fantastic. Well,
Hmm.
thank you so much for coming on the podcast again. And if anyone out there is looking for a new supervisor, please take a look at the supervisor register on the intandem.co.uk website, and also for ongoing courses for supervision.
Excellent.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so
Brilliant.
much,
much for
Thank you.
Zoe.
listening.
Thank you, Zoe. Yeah.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.